My name is Margaret again, and I'll be hosting tonight's telephone town hall. We've got Sam Forstag, Ella Smith, Caitlin Piserchia, and Amara Reese-Hansell. We're dialing out to hundreds of young Montanans to make sure everyone knows about the issues that matter most to our generation during the legislative session. And you're going to have plenty of opportunities to ask questions tonight. All you have to do is press you're on your phone, and you'll be added to a speaker queue. And you'll have your opportunity to ask questions of anyone on the call about any legislative issues that matter to you. And you don't have to talk if you don't want to. So if you're, cooking in your kitchen, have us on speakerphone, petting your cat, whatever you're doing tonight, we're happy you joined us. All righty, looks like we've dialed out to everyone tonight. Thank you all for coming. Before we begin, I want to give you a quick introduction to Forward Montana. Our organization was founded in 2004 by young folks in Missoula to lower the barriers to young people getting involved in politics. Since 2012, Forward Montana has been the largest third-party voter registration organization in the state. We expanded to Bozeman in 2013 and Billings in 2016 to train young Montanans in civic advocacy across the state. Right now, we're focused on getting young Montanans involved in the legislature by making them aware of the issues that will affect our lives and teaching them skills it takes to make change. So before we hear from our first speaker tonight, we want to conduct a polling question, you guys. So if you don't mind answering on your phone screen, I'm going to tell you the question right now. We want to know about what's at stake with higher education funding. And so we want to know, in 2017, the average Montana student borrower finished school with about $28,000 in debt. So our first poll question for you tonight is how much student debt do you currently have? So you can press 1 on your phone keyboard if it's none, press 2 if it's between $1,000 and $10,000, press 3 if it's between $10,000 and $20,000, press 4 if it's $20,000 or more, and press 5 if you're unsure, don't know, or prefer not to answer. And so we're asking about how much student debt you have. Press 1 if it's none, press 2 if it's between $1,000 and $10,000, press 3 if it's between $10,000 and $20,000, press 4 if it's $20,000 or more, press 5 if you're unsure, don't know, or prefer not to answer. All righty, looks like we've got a bunch of answers in, so I'm going to stop that question and hand you guys off to our first speaker. We have Sam Forstag. He's the lobbyist for the Montana Association of Students and the former student body president at UM. Sam, could you introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about what's at stake for Montana University funding?
Sure. Hi, everybody. As Margaret said, Sam Forstag. I've been in Helena for not quite 2 weeks now as the legislative session is starting up, and student debt and, part of that same continuum, college affordability is our top priority for the Montana Associated Students. We're the group that represents roughly 43,000 students in the Montana University system at the 4-year institutions, the 2 years, and the community colleges, 11 campuses across the state. And, as far as student debt goes, we've all heard the story nationwide, and the story is not so dissimilar here in Montana. And I think the story in Montana here is a little more interesting and more relevant because we have a chance to really change it over the next 3.5 months now. As far as numbers, you heard Margaret say that the average student borrower is graduating with a little over $28,000 in debt just here in Montana, and those student borrowers account for roughly 60% of students in the system. So that's 24,000 people coming through the Montana University system every year that are forced to borrow just to get through school. And I'll tell you, this is my first time working a legislative session. But as we talk to representatives and senators, and a lot of them are new, it's kind of something folks just seem unaware of, that tuition is really not nearly as affordable as it was less than 20 years ago. Kind of at the root of the problem is that in the last 27 years, our public colleges and universities have become a lot less public due to a lot less public support. And Montana students have just unfortunately borne the brunt of that. In terms of some quick figures, since 2000, average tuition at our college campuses has doubled. And that's the average across 11 universities. At the high end, you have campuses like the University of Montana and MSU, where tuition has increased by roughly $4,000 a year. So that's 130% increase. And that goes all the way down to some of the 2 years where at the lower end you're seeing things like $2,200 a year or $1,400 at UM Helena. So it's just an entirely different environment that folks are coming to college and trying to afford to pay, and those problems are compounded by, you know, affordable housing issues in places like Missoula and Bozeman that make the cost of attendance a whole lot higher. So really, that's a story that representatives and senators out here need to hear. You know, I keep telling the folks I work for, we can only do so much. You know, we're talking to folks one by one. We had 150 representatives in 90 days of legislative session. So what people can do from home the best, it really is just writing letters, making phone calls, and people, you know, people's districts here in Montana are relatively small, and when they get 5 to 10 phone calls or letters in a week or two, it really does affect their decision making. You know, some more background for folks is, you know, as recently as 1992, the state paid for roughly 76% of the cost of education for college students. And just in 2018, that's more like 37%. So that means the state currently bears less than half the proportion of the cost that they did when most of our representatives were going to college. And that means that our whole university system has become a whole lot more enrollment dependent. So when you see stories like at the University of Montana, where we have enrollment declines over the last 6 to 7 years, that means that the impact of that is about twice as harsh on our campuses and a whole lot harder to recover from. So we need to start getting these stories that representatives and senators here. We have some events planned that I would love to hear from folks on. I think that Forward Montana will probably be involved with as well. And you know, the bottom line is that our representatives need to hear the story of why higher education is a good economic investment. You know, every $1 the state invests in higher ed, it generates $3.65 in economic activity. 80% of Montana graduates are living and working in Montana a year after graduation. And just frankly, the economy is different. You know, there's been roughly 12 million jobs created since the Great Recession, and of those, roughly 11.9 million required some post-secondary education. So we need a college education that's affordable more than ever, and it hasn't been getting more affordable. So what we need is to support some of the proposals we have, and there's real reason for optimism because Governor Bullock's budget that's in front of us right now has given us the opportunity to get that proportion of state funding back up to 40%. He's proposed $24 million in a funded tuition freeze to keep tuition where it is without forcing more cuts on the campuses. And on top of that, a $5 million package for state-sponsored financial aid that would require a one-to-one match from foundations and universities and put $10 million of financial aid into the pockets of students who need it the most, which is those 60% who have to borrow and are borrowing roughly $28,000 to get through college. So, you know, I'll end there, and, you know, if we have a chance for questions, I'd love to take those from folks. Yeah, and I'll say my contact info if you need it. You can reach me at 406-880-0088, and you can always leave a voicemail with Forward Montana. So thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you so much, Sam. Remember, you guys, if you have any questions for Sam or any of our other speakers, press 0 on your keypad at any time. We'll connect you with one of our screeners, and you can get lined up to ask a question. For now, we have another poll question for you guys. We want to know more about how young people and all people in Montana access their health insurance. So our second poll question tonight is, how do you obtain health insurance? So press 1 if you don't currently have health insurance. Press 2 if you get health insurance through your parents' school or work. Press 3 if you're enrolled in Medicaid. Press 4 if you've purchased your insurance independently from a private provider, and press 5 if your answer is other, don't know, or prefer not to answer. So the question is, how do you get your health insurance? And the answers are, press 1 if you don't currently have it, press 2 if you get health insurance through your parents' school or work, press 3 if you're enrolled in Medicaid, press 4 if you purchased your insurance independently from a private provider, and press 5 if your answer is other, don't know, or prefer not to answer. All right, thank you guys for answering our poll question this evening. And we are going to hear from Ella from Montana Women Vote. She'll be talking about Medicaid expansion, and we want to know, did you know that 61% of people on Medicaid are under the age of 40? So this is an important issue for young Montanans, and Ella, take it away.
Hi, thank you. My name is Ella, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am super excited to talk to you all about Medicaid and particularly the importance of reauthorizing Medicaid expansion in this legislative session. So in 2015, the Montana legislature expanded Medicaid, but without legislative action this session, the program is set to expire in July of 2019. Montana's Medicaid expansion provides health insurance to nearly 100,000 people, which is just about 1 in 10 Montanans. And recently, Representative Mary Castero announced the Keep Montana Healthy Act, which is the first bill of this session to reauthorize the program. And this bill would lift the Medicaid expansion sunset and continue the program as it currently is written. And as Margaret mentioned, 61% of people on Medicaid are under the age of 40, and some state-specific demographics. The largest demographic living in poverty in Montana is men between the ages of 18 and 24, followed by women between the ages of 18 and 24, and then followed closely by women from the ages of 25 to 34. So obviously Medicaid and Medicaid expansion is designed to really benefit low-income communities, and those communities are disproportionately young people. Montana Medicaid expansion has saved the state $58 million in budget savings, which, you know, that savings can be redistributed for things like higher education funding, DPHHS, which is the Department of Health and Human Services funding, and all kinds of other areas that suffer from budget cuts pretty consistently. It's also brought in $47 million in new tax revenue. And part of that savings is due to the fact that people don't have to go to the emergency room as much because they have that healthcare coverage to be able to access their doctors. And they also are able to access preventative care for the first time, potentially in their life. Another thing that's going on with Medicaid expansion in the state is that there are some moderate Republicans who delightfully refer to themselves as the Solutions Caucus, who are trying to implement work requirements and significantly shrink the number of people who have access to Medicaid. And this year, Arkansas became the first state to add work requirements to their Medicaid program. And as a result, nearly 17,000 people in Arkansas have been kicked off Medicaid coverage, and that number continues to grow. And we think that we can't let that happen in Montana. Also, Montana's Medicaid expansion program has been successfully connecting people with work. One of the major successes of expansion has been the Help Link program, which helps thousands of Montanans access job training to help secure employment or greater employment. So since this passed, Montana has seen increased workforce participation among Montanans with low incomes. In addition to promoting physical health, Medicaid expansion also enables access to mental health and substance use disorder treatment services. 15,495 eligible Indigenous Montanans have been able to access comprehensive health care services across the state. This is helping to close the staggering American Indian health disparities gap and bring much needed health care dollars into Indian Health Services, IHS, tribal and urban health facilities. And all of these services are actually, they qualify for 100% federal reimbursement and therefore are provided at no cost to the state Medicaid program. So just to sum it all up, not only...
Hi guys, I think we might be reconnected. All right, it looks like we're back. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that was some serious technical difficulties. It looks like 11 people hung in there, stuck it out through that awkward silence, you guys. So I really appreciate that. And I believe we were in the middle of Ella talking. Ella, are you still there?
I am.
Okay, amazing. So thank you everyone so much for sticking with us. I think Ella was just talking about summing everything up, talking to us about Medicaid expansion.
Yep, I'll just quickly finish up, to sum it all up, Medicaid expansion in Montana disproportionately benefits young people and also our most vulnerable communities, queer people, people of color, and women. And the coverage is absolutely fantastic compared to other states in the nation. It covers mental health. There's provision for dental. And it also, interestingly, provides gender-affirming care for trans, non-binary, and gender-diverse Montanans, which is super rare nationwide. So not only is it an important program, but it's really, really comprehensive coverage. In terms of getting involved with legislative advocacy, I would highly recommend that everyone program the legislative switchboard number into your phone, along with the names of your legislators. That number is 406-444-4800, and you can find out who your legislators are at ledge.mt.gov/map. And watch Montana Women Vote for any updates on how to get involved with Medicaid expansion. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you so much, Ella. And yeah, thank you to you guys who are still with us. I'm honestly just so excited that we're back. And remember, you can press 0 at any time if you have a question. We are going to talk about climate change next. Dun, dun, dun. A quick poll question for you guys. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest, how worried are you about the effects of climate change in the next 10 years? Please answer using the keys 1 through 5 on your phone. Again, that's on a scale of 1 to 5. How worried are you about the effects of climate change in the next 10 years? With 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest, you can answer with the keypad on your phone. All right, looks like we got answers from just about everyone there. Thank you guys so much. Next up, we are going to hear from our third speaker, Caitlin Piserchia. She works for Montana as our conservation fellow. She's going to be talking to you about legislation surrounding renewable energy and climate change.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. So when Ford Montana collects information about issues that are important to young people, conservation, renewable energy, and action on climate come up a lot. So these are some of the issues we're committed to advocating for. And I want to start a little bit big picture. So action on climate is definitely an area where we need to see a lot more movement in Montana. We know that the current track we're on will make our state more volatile, amplify existing inequalities, and threaten the vitality of our state. More wildfires and smoke, lower stream flow, more unpredictable weather has implications for folks with pre-existing health conditions, the health of our streams and rivers, and industries like agriculture, fishing, and recreation. Continuing down this current path is kind of like playing Russian roulette with the ecosystems that sustain our communities. And more intense wildfires and more unpredictable weather events will also strain our state budget, make it more difficult to get funding for really important social services. So that's all the bad news, but we're trying to keep the big picture in mind and advocate for a hopeful future for Montana on the local, state, and federal level, and kind of screening that through initiatives that support a rapid but just transition to renewable energy and create good jobs in the process. There's a lot of potential for more wind and solar in Montana. We have the technology to make this transition, and we have strong popular support for renewable energy. So we just need to build the political will at the Public Service Commission, the state legislature, on the federal level, and locally in city councils. So at the legislature this session, one piece of the puzzle, we are playing mostly a supporting role in boosting proactive bills and helping stop bad bills as needed. And when it comes to renewable energy and climate in particular, we're looking to defend against any increased reliance on fossil fuels or a tax on rooftop solar. And we'll also be following other climate-related bills and energy-related bills and seeing where it makes sense to direct support. So multiple ways to be involved, including calling your legislators about particular bills as they come up and attending rallies focused around particular issue areas. There's a Northern Plains Clean Energy Rally next Wednesday at 12 I hope you'll check out at the Capitol. And one other action item I want to highlight is coming up pretty quick this Friday at 9 to 12 in the old Supreme Court chambers in the state capitol. But it's a really important one. There's going to be a public hearing on Northwestern Energy's resource procurement plan, or essentially how Northwestern Energy plans to power the western part of our state over the next 20 years. So this is a pretty rare event where representatives from Northwestern Energy, the Public Service Commission, and legislators from the House and Senate Energy Committees will all be in the same room, and they definitely need to hear that Montanans want investment in renewable energy sources, not new investments in expensive natural gas infrastructure, which is likely to be part of the plan. So big opportunity for Montanans to come and say, we want Montana to be powered by renewables, not coal and gas. And if you want any more information, definitely feel free to contact me. My phone number is 609-238-5236 or Caitlin, CAITLIN, at fordmontana.org. There's also a Facebook event, and it's called, if you look up Public Hearing on Northwestern Energy at State Capitol, it should pop up. Cool, and thanks to everyone for being on this call.
All right, thank you so much, Caitlin. Remember, guys, if you have a question for Caitlin or any of our other people on the call tonight, you can dial 0 at any time, and we'll get your question in line. And we have one last poll question for you this evening before our last speaker, and this one is about voting. So, how did you vote in the last election? Press 1 if you voted by mail. Press 2 if you voted in person at a polling location. Press 3 if you voted in person at a third-party drop box on campus or elsewhere. Press 4 if you didn't vote in the last election. Press 5 for other or prefer not to answer. Again, so press 1 if you voted by mail. Press 2 if you voted in person at a polling location. Press 3 if you voted in person at a third-party drop box on campus or elsewhere. Press 4 if you didn't vote in the last election. Press 5 for other or prefer not to answer. Looks like we've got everyone on the call's responses. Thank you guys so much for engaging with us this evening. And our last speaker is Amara Reese-Hansell. She's Ford Montana's Bozeman Field Manager, and she's going to be talking to you tonight about voting rights and the bills we're supporting to make voting easier this legislative session. Amara?
Awesome. Thanks, Margaret. Yeah, like Margaret said, my name is Amara. I'm the Field Manager in Bozeman. I'm super stoked to be on the town hall tonight. I am connected to this work over the next few months because I oversee our high school programs, so I'm focused primarily on legislation that affects young folks across the state. So the first thing I want to talk about tonight is pre-registration for 16-year-olds. This legislation would allow eligible Montanans to pre-register to vote by adding them to a list of voters who would automatically be registered on their 18th birthday. This is a really crucial piece of legislation for young people because the earlier we can expose someone to like a concept, behavior, or habit, the more likely they are to engage in it. So that means if we can expose 16-year-olds to registering to vote, they're more likely to actually vote and then keep their registration up to date as they get older. The more young Montanans that vote, the more electoral power we have to elect candidates and pass ballot measures that reflect our values, experiences, and diverse identities. A second piece of legislation that also affects 16-year-olds concerns election judges. This legislation would lower the age at which Montanans can serve as election judges from 18 to 16. By lowering the age that Montanans can serve as election judges, the state demonstrates a sense of trust in young Montanans to safeguard the security of our elections. We know that trust can help young people develop a sense of power over our systems of governance, and this legislation would also help election administrators fill election judge positions, a task that is notoriously hard across the state. A third piece of legislation I want to touch on concerns both clarifying and expanding satellite election offices. Satellite election offices allow people, particularly in reservation communities, access to an election office in their own area or community. This is important because election offices in some counties can be hundreds of miles away from the community in which people actually live. The current state law also doesn't dictate where, when, or how satellite election offices are supposed to function. This means that it's entirely up to county clerks to decide what services they can provide and when they're open. And so the impact with that is that different tribal communities are served in a variety of different ways. So this legislation would clarify and strengthen their presence and consistency of services that people can count on and should be able to count on across Montana. Currently, satellite election offices are only mandated by a Secretary of State memo, and there's very little clarity in reservation communities around how many days these locations have to be open for folks, what hours they have to be open, and what services they have to provide. Jade Barr, a badass young legislator out of Billings, is carrying this bill, so watch out for that. If you are as stoked about this legislation as I am, have any questions, or want to get involved in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out to me personally, and I can get you connected to the right folks. My email is Amara, A-M-A-R-A, @forwardmontana.org. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I look forward to answering your questions.
All righty. Thank you so much, Amara. All right, guys, it is time for questions. So if you have a question, press 0 on your keyboard. We've got a few people lined up already. I see. First up, we've got Cindy Blodgett from Missoula. Just give us a second. All right, Cindy, you are live.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. My question isn't specific to any one thing, but I think there's a lot of information that people can follow up on, and wondering if all of the speakers could post their contact information on the Facebook event.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Cindy. We will be happy. I'll compile everyone's contact info and just post them in one post on the Facebook event, and that way you guys will have a good way to get in touch with all our speakers and ask more questions if you want. And also, if you have any questions that remain after this event is over, you can always leave a voicemail for us, and we can get in touch with you that way as well. Thank you so much, Cindy. I hope you have a great rest of your night. Next up, we have Kelly. Give us a sec here. All right, Kelly, you are live from Bozeman.
Hi, I just wanted to say thanks to all of our speakers. It's so awesome to hear about the work that you're all doing, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to get plugged in. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you so much for listening with us tonight, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Next up, we have Mary from Missoula. And Mary, you're live. What's your question?
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to say thanks to all the speakers and to everyone at Forward Montana who made this possible. This is so awesome. My question is in regards to voting. So I am curious as since recently during the last election, an initiative was passed where Montanans can no longer utilize third-party organizations to turn in ballots. So I am wondering what community members and young Montanans can do to advocate on behalf of their peers and other Montanans that utilize those services.
All righty, that sounds like a question for Amara. Amara, can you speak to what we can do to advocate against ballot measures like LR 129?
Definitely. So I do just want to pinpoint that right now we don't know of any legislation that's moving forward to clarify some of the language that's in LR 129. So I'm actually not, I can't really speak to the effects that I think that LR 129 might have across the state. However, if this is something that you're concerned about, definitely don't hesitate to write a letter to your senators, call them, call your legislators. Also, keeping up with our subscription newsletter, What the Helena, we'll be able to keep you updated on what's happening with LR 129 if we see any movement. Thank you for your question.
All righty. Thank you so much, Mary. Have a good rest of your evening. And looks like we've got another question here from Nicole in Missoula. All right, Nicole, you're live.
Hey, this is Nicole. My first question is for Amara, and I'm wondering what an election judge is. And my second question is for Caitlin, and I'm wondering if we can't attend on Friday at the hearing, if there's other ways we can still get involved or make an impact on climate change in that way.
All righty, so let's start with Amara here. Amara, the question for you is, what is an election judge?
Yeah, election judges are utilized across the state on election day, and they ensure that our polling locations kind of work efficiently, they're up to date in best practices, and help people both utilize same-day registration services and register to vote and then vote. So they are very, very crucial across Montana, and we depend, they're volunteer positions, so we depend on a lot of people to kind of staff these locations on election day. So a piece of that legislation that would move that age from 18 to 16 would be really crucial in helping election administrators across.
It looks like we're back, but we're going to wrap up because we've had so much technical difficulties. If you guys are still on the line, then thank you so much for joining us this evening. And please get in touch with us via Facebook or email or our website if you have any more questions, all right? Thank you guys so much, and have a great rest of your night.